Happy Valentine's Day! Wait, no. I hate Valentine's Day. I am the Grinch of Valentine's Day. Did I hate this movie though? What is up, everybody? Random Man here, bringing you my review for the 2026 film adaptation of Wuthering Heights, based on the 1847 novel of the same name by Emily Bronte. The plot of this period romantic drama is set against the backdrop of the Yorkshire moors and follows the intense and destructive relationship between Catherine and Heathcliff. Going into this movie, I was curious to see it, and full disclosure, this is the first time I have ever experienced this story. I know it's a very world-renowned book in that it is a romance novel, but it also came from the Romantic period of history, I believe, and I've never read the original book, and I've never seen any of the multiple film adaptations that came afterward. I'm coming from this thing from literally having no other experience or much context as to what made the story so famous. I was also curious because this is the latest feature film written, produced, and directed by Emerald Fennell. Now, previously, Fennell did 2020's Promising Young Woman, which earned her the Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay and 2 additional nominations for Best Director and Best Picture. I enjoyed this film when it first came out, and rewatching it on Blu-ray, I softened on it a bit, especially with the divisive ending, but it was still very interesting in terms of like what it was trying to say with the story and being so modern, and of course, a lot to say like with specific perspectives and of course causing a lot of debate afterward. But yeah, there was that, and it made her quite an interesting voice to say the least. And then a few years later, she brought us Saltburn, which I liked less. It was well made like her previous film, but more of the shock value was just there to go ahead and get people talking, and that's what a lot of people were going into this version of Wuthering Heights as. What has been emphasized, at least with the marketing and just how the movie looked, knowing the filmmaker, is that this movie is leaning into the more salacious or sultry side of the novel, which again, I have no experience with, but I also do enjoy the leading actors here, and it did look like quite a stunner. So, starting out with the cast and their performances, we have Margot Robbie as Catherine, or Kathy. Now, she is someone who, her character at a young age, she's played by Charlotte Mellington in the earlier sections of the movie. She is quite good. Her and her dad, played by Martin Clunes, who steals a lot of the movie from the onset, are living in their estate that is not doing so well, and then they come across this child, this young boy, who they eventually take in as their own, an adopted son, if you would, or servant, and he is named Heathcliff because he doesn't have a name. And then with Robbie's character, once she is grown up and playing Kathy, I think that she shows a lot of the same initial kind of childlike innocence that was previously played by Mellington in the earlier parts of the movie. And then Robbie is an accomplished actress. She's also one of the producers of this movie through her production company, and she has an eye for picking out certain material to not only put herself in, but also try and tell or retell in this case. And, you know, Robbie, of course, is quite gorgeous in all of the different ensembles and dresses that she is wearing, and everything else that we see in between for character. You see that, yeah, she is kind of having this really weird relationship with Heathcliff in the first place. I mean, when she names him Heathcliff, it's after her dead brother, which is already weird, and then she doesn't have the same feelings for him initially, but then, oh, things change later on in the movie. And speaking of Heathcliff, he is played by Jacob Elordi here. Recent Oscar nominee Jacob Elordi, playing the creature in Frankenstein by Guillermo del Toro. He is my choice to win Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars. We'll see what happens here. As a young boy, when we were initially introduced to him, him. He's played by Owen Cooper, who is most recently now known for his breakout turn in the Netflix series Adolescence, for which he is winning just about every award possible. I have not seen that show, but I was impressed with his performance here, and him growing up into Jacob Elordi as the character. He's quiet in many instances. Again, early on, he really doesn't talk much, but then gets to talking later, and then the relationship that he has between himself and Kathy, it's something that is with a lot of lust and desire, but he's the one going after Kathy as they have grown together, and she doesn't feel the same way. And again, later, things do go ahead and take a turn after he disappears for a little bit. And Elordi, I think he is someone who is also choosing projects that are very interesting, breaking out of, the teen heartthrob kind of roles that he has had early on. Although he is still, with his charming good looks here, that are able to woo anyone that watch him in anything imaginable. The chemistry between himself and Robbie, I thought, was palpable in many instances, quite telling given what these characters are saying and doing to each other for a lot of it after a specific point here. And then we have other characters here, like Hung Chow, who plays a lady in waiting at the same estate where Kathy is at. I thought she was very good. Allison Oliver, who was also in Saltburn. Jacob Elordi was also previously in Saltburn. She plays a ward of an estate that is about 5 miles away from Kathy's estate, and she stole a bit of the movie too. The supporting performances here, I think, steal some bits of the movie, as her character is someone who is obsessed with ribbons, but then also has a lot of the funny moments here and there, and then also gets involved with Heathcliff later on. I think the performances here are quite strong from everybody, leads and supporting. And then we get into the writing of this film. Once again, Emerald Fennell wrote, produced, and directed, so by extension, I'm also talking about her directing here. How she helms this thing, how she puts this whole focus on the narrative is something that, again, to someone who has never read the book or even knew about the original story, initially, it did grab me from how we are introduced to the two characters as kids and how they grow up together. And it's a romance in a different sense, at least in what is presented here, because we see that it's trying to go ahead and be modern while also set in the backdrop of the Yorkshire moors in the 1700s. Now, I should say that given that Emerald Fennell has made films in the past that do push the envelope, this movie is trying to do that as well, at least with the time and place it is set in. And I know that there have been quite a lot of liberties taken with the source material in terms of adapting this same story into a film, and watching it just how it played out, just in its own vacuum as a film, I think that early on, I was quite engaged with what I was seeing. The way it moves initially, I mean, this is, in one sense, a stuffy costume drama, but I think that it moves like a more modern movie, even though it's set, of course, centuries ago. And then also, after a specific point, Heathcliff disappears. He goes away for years on end, and then Kathy does get married to the aforementioned head of the estate that is 5 miles away from her home, and we see Heathcliff return years later, and that is when the relationship starts up again, and it gets into a little bit more of the whole passionate angle that this version of the story is playing up from what I was gathering before seeing this thing in the theater earlier. And in terms of how this movie is, in being quite sexy, for lack of a better term, I mean, it's a horny movie, and I don't think it's that graphic or is as graphic as the marketing is trying to play it up to be. I mean, look at my shirt here of Thini or Martina Sostel. I love you, Thini. I mean, we see a bit of nudity or just a bit of skin throughout, but it's nothing graphic or really too explicit to see what's on the screen here. I mean, if you want to compare this to Saltburn, that movie was just straight up nasty at times. I mean, that movie took it further than what this movie does at any point here. I mean, they do throw in a bit of BDSM type imagery and detailings here and there just to have the relationship really bubble up further into the second half of the movie. But that goes into what I think is the main thing holding this movie back for me in terms of being more engaged with it. It's kind of similar to the issues I had with Saltburn in that the movie just gets really repetitive after a while. I mean, between Kathy and Heathcliff, it goes into he loves me not type of material, or just having that go back and forth for a lot of it, because Kathy's already married. Heathcliff is coming back in after he himself becomes quite wealthy again, after he came from nothing as a child and was taken in by Kathy's family. All of that coming together, I was like, okay, the movie picks back up again when that character returns. And then continuing on, I just felt like the movie was going through the same motions that a typical story like this would be showing or going through, at least from what I'm familiar with in terms of other stories from this same romantic period in history. And, I was entertained by it overall, but I didn't feel like it was doing much else to really lift up the material, despite not having been familiar with it in the first place. I could just tell as a story on its own, it's just going through certain cliches or certain tropes that are done with almost any other kind of romantic type story here. And by the end, I know that the story took a bunch of liberties by that point, and I know some stuff was omitted that are shown off later on in the book. In case you don't know, I'm not going to give it away. But in terms of the technical elements here, I think that this movie is gorgeously put together. This is such a constructively crafted, costumed drama, with the whole costume design by Jacqueline Duran, who is legendary, and showing off what she has designed and put on Margot Robbie's character specifically. Every dress that is on her, each one is unique. It is colorful, free-flowing, and long, and just like really extravagant altogether. I mean, we're not even at this year's Oscars ceremony, but if this movie gets one nomination at next year's Oscars, it's got to be for Best Costume Design. I think that is one of the big strengths of the movie. The production design and sets to it looking like we are just dropped into the backdrop of the Yorkshire Moors in the 1700s. The cinematography here, Linus Sandgren shot this thing, and it is beautifully filmed. Many moments that are just very sweeping and looking like it is of a scale of what we're viewing in this time period. Quick little edit right here while talking about the technical elements, as I completely forgot to mention the music here. The original score was done by Anthony Willis, and I thought that it was quite a notable droning and swelling score at times that fit the whole visual aesthetic the movie was going for. But the songs were done by Charlie XCX, and I thought that at times, they fit the mood of what the movie was going for. That one song in the trailer where you audibly hear her singing was used in a montage sequence after Kathy has been married and is experiencing married life. And I thought that at times it didn't fit or completely work in here. I'm a fan of Charlie XCX either way, and I think that her breaking into film in more ways than one recently is giving her an edge in terms of having a lot more to do creatively. The way it is cut to, the editing, at certain points, there are certain cuts or edits that I thought were just artistically done in just having me go further in the whole sumptuous kind of feel the movie's going for. Like, we see Margot Robbie from a bird's eye view lying down on the ground at one point in a red dress, and then it cuts to Jacob Elordi riding a horse with an orangey red background that looks like it's sunset. Oh my God, it is beautifully filmed. I mean, this is a beautifully put together film altogether. And then the way it runs all together at about 2 hours and 15 minutes, I think that it was fitting for what it was trying to do altogether in running that long. I thought that it was getting slow by the end because, again, the movie was just getting repetitive and just going through the same things that we were seeing over and over again with these characters. And by the time it does end, it ends at a specific point where I'm like, okay, yeah, it ends right there. And it kind of felt like every other period or costume drama that I've seen, I guess. But this movie had elements sprinkled in between that were making it a bit different than before, and in the stylings of what Emerald Fennell has done, just to see that she is putting her own stamp on the film. I mean, the movie's title is stylized with quotation marks, so you can tell that already this movie was going to be different from its source material without me even knowing what happened in the first place. So I guess, given that Fennell's previous two screenplays for feature films were original, and this is her first adapted screenplay, it seemed like she wanted to tell this kind of story in her way, but by way of actually adapting Wuthering Heights itself. I'm not sure if this movie would have gotten much traction if it was just a Wuthering Heights type of story, but again, it wouldn't have gotten as much attention as it is now with how it is trying to be edgy or pushing the envelope and having these really two attractive stars at the center of it all. All in all, I think that this movie has intrigue. It is beautifully put together with the costumes, sets, cinematography, all of it here that make it really worth seeing in the theater if you do want to see this thing at all. But its repetitive nature and just seeing it going through some of the motions are making me bring it down a few notches in that I didn't hate this movie, as I was thinking about in my intro for this video. I didn't love it either. I would say in comparison to Fennell's previous two films, I like this a bit more than Saltburn, and I would say maybe it's on the same level or a little under Promising Young Woman. No, yeah, it's under Promising Young Woman in terms of how that movie did have a lot to say, and it had me thinking a lot afterward, no matter what you thought of the divisive ending. But here, I think that, yeah, it was just okay. I thought that Wuthering Heights from the year 2026 was just okay. And I would say that for anyone that is, of course, going to see this thing today on Valentine's Day or sometime during this Valentine's Day weekend, I cautiously recommend it, as you are going to be treated to some visuals that are very vibrant and very vivacious. And for a lot of people, that is going to be more than enough. And also seeing a classic type story told on the big screen with some changes here and there. With all of that being said, my final verdict for Wuthering Heights is 3 out of 5 stars. Thank you all, as always, for watching. Be sure to like this video, comment on what you thought of Wuthering Heights. Social media links in the description. Subscribe to my channel for more, and I'll catch you on the next movie review.